These Colorado businesses survived the pandemic,
We kind of grew up during the pandemic.
only to now be faced with fears of a possible recession.
In a strong economy, a lot of things are easier.
Tonight, we have a 360 in-depth look at the good
I see a very bright future because American enterprise is quite alive.
the bad.
It definitely has been difficult to try to find good help.
How your favorite local businesses will handle the impact.
You can fake it for a while, but if your community doesn't care that you stick around, you won't.
First tonight at 6, we'll take a live look from our Denver 7 roof cam as a new round of storms is moving through the metro. Glad you're with us tonight for Denver 7 News at 6. I'm Shannon Audrey.
I'm Ann Trujillo, so let's send it right over to Chief Meteorologist Mike Nelson. He's been checking out the radar. Mike?
A lot of green on that radar screen. It's a lot of gray in our skies. None of these are severe, but some of them could be some locally heavy rainmakers. We're keeping an eye on the Cameron Peak and the East Troublesome burn scars, as well as down the Grizzly Creek area, because there have been some flash flood watches there. For Denver, you can see the rain coming through. It's pretty light stuff, but it has made a difference in the temperatures. Earlier today, we hit 90 degrees, and with those clouds and showers, now down to 74. More showers on the way in the next 24 hours. Your full 7-day on the way in about 15 minutes.
All right, we're seeing about 15. Thank you, Mike. Good news and bad news today on the U.S. economy.
New data released today suggests the economy shrank at a slightly slower rate than estimated during the second quarter.
But the economy is still shrinking, and that's created a debate among experts. Are we in a recession?
Denver 7's Russell Haythorne is here to break it all down, including how it impacts the businesses you care about.
Let's start by defining a recession. Webster says it's a period of temporary economic decline during which trade and industrial activity are reduced, generally defined by a fall in GDP in 2 successive quarters. That happened in the first 2 quarters of 2022. Contributors to a looming recession this time around include record high inflation, the ongoing war in Ukraine, and people leaving the workforce, among other issues. Ultimately, people tighten their home budgets and stop spending. So how is it all impacting businesses in Colorado? Let's go 360. We picked 4 local businesses, and here are their stories. When it comes to keeping you on the road,
As far as business is concerned, we're doing very well.
Brian Becker's Meineke Car Center, like most auto shops, can barely meet demand.
Thank you for choosing Meineke Car Care Center. This is Brian. This has been a very strange time as far as automotive is concerned. The market for cars is ridiculous. No new cars available.
Because of that and recession fears, Becker says most people are pumping the brakes on buying new, opting instead for the occasional pit stop.
When folks are trying to figure out what the best options are, the consensus says to fix the ones that they have.
And while Becker is fully staffed, many shops are running on E.
It definitely has been difficult to try to find good help.
That brings us to the restaurant industry.
This is Garden Grace, our modern steakhouse. We do Angus beef, grass-fed beef, prime beef, Wagyu beef.
Renowned chef Troy Gard
Little by little,
just hopes a looming recession after surviving the pandemic isn't a recipe for disaster.
we're in the second biggest building in Denver, so 1801 California. So just think, 1 million square feet and only half of it is being used. People are working from home, people aren't coming in.
On top of a workforce slow to return to downtown, the fear is a recession could cool off tourism and nightlife. Couple that with staffing issues and things could get dicey.
We still are only open 3 days a week for lunch.
We're not out of the woods, unfortunately.
Laura Shunk, president of the Colorado Restaurant Foundation, says restaurants now have to operate more like corporations in an attempt to attract and keep good workers.
They've raised wages to sort of historically high levels. They've added benefits, insurance, paid leave, mental health care.
On the flip side,
We have snickerdoodle cookies.
Bakery 4 on Tennyson may just take the cake when it comes to bucking recession fears.
We specialize in sourdough bread and pastry, so European style sourdough, French pastries, laminated doughs, things like that. All of our butter's imported from France, all of our chocolate's imported from France.
The line is a testament to what they do here.
So she's laminating the dough.
Owner Sean Bergen finding a sweet spot in an otherwise sour economy.
We kind of grew up during the pandemic. We were right place, right time. We're lucky enough as to where we get people from all over the country and some people from across the globe that want to come and work with us and see what we're doing.
But while he's well staffed in the back, back. He too has the help wanted sign out for good people up front.
Even if the pay is great and the tips are great, there's just not that need for people to look for those positions, it seems like at least. The more people that we have up front, the faster we can get people through the line.
The service industry in general is very vulnerable.
Economists like Dr. Kishore Kulkarni point out there are industries that are more recession-proof, including grocery stores, liquor stores, healthcare, tech, repair shops, and freight operations.
Computer technology or information technology companies, they do good. Google, for example, Amazon.
And that brings us to the retail side of things.
Thanks for calling Farrell. There's nothing scarier to a small business than a recession because our property taxes are not going to go down, our payroll costs are not going to go down, and our cost of inventory is not going to go down.
Jimmy Funkhauser went out on a limb 6 years ago, opening an indie outdoor gear shop in a city saturated with outdoor retailers.
Everyone said that it made no sense in the shadow of the big corporate outdoor retailers here, but we've had a great community here in the neighborhood. It's the only thing that ever keeps small businesses alive.
And he's driven by a mission to make the great outdoors accessible.
That's the main reason we launched our used gear and clothing program, is because we wanted to make those activities accessible to everybody. We don't really control price on new gear, but once we sell it used, we take control of the price conversation, and that allows us to make things much more accessible for people.
While there is a healthy fear of a recession, there's also a great deal of optimism.
I see a very bright future because American enterprise is quite alive.
As for inflation, there's good and bad news. Gas prices are down and so are airline tickets. For example, a ticket to Hawaii has dropped $154 since the beginning of summer, according to the travel site Hopper. Tickets to California are also way down, but food prices are still a big issue for consumers. For example, beef is up 16%, eggs are up 11%, and fruits and vegetables up anywhere from 8 to 6%. And Ann and Shannon, as you know, those are daily expenses for people.
It is complicated. And it doesn't feel, though, like it did in 08. So it is a complicated time right now. Russell, thanks for that.
Thanks,
You
Russell.
bet.
All right, and we've covered the concerns over a possible recession extensively over the last month, and you can find how to prepare your family's budget right now on thedenverchannel.com.
Colorado's Department of Human Services is now looking into potential fraud and child safety concerns on the heels of allegations made against a former Arapahoe County DHS employee. Robin Nicita is the ex-partner of former Aurora Police Chief Vanessa Wilson. Now, she's already being charged criminally with falsely reporting that Aurora City Council member Danielle Jurinsky sexually abused her own son. And now she is under investigation by the FBI over allegations that children were wrongly taken away from several other parents as a result of Nicita's actions. Well, today, Councilwoman Jurinsky filed a class action lawsuit against Nicita and the entire Arapahoe County DHS office.
What I have quickly found out is what happened to me is not an isolated incident at all. And I will go as far as to say that I believe at this point there is an equitable evil that is plaguing Arapahoe County DHS.
A spokesperson for Arapahoe County says they are confident in their ability to protect kids from abuse and neglect. And they go on to say that the allegations filed in the complaint draw conclusions without citing factual specifics.
28-year-old Rennie Kassam has been arrested in what Aurora police call a bias-motivated attack. Kassam's accused of attacking 2 men at a gas station for speaking Spanish. Police say he doused them with gasoline, then tried to find a lighter to set them on fire.
Right now, Jeffco's school board is meeting to discuss recommendations to close 16 elementary schools. Those schools have more than 2,400 students and nearly 430 staff members. Here's a list of those schools, and they include Emory Elementary in Lakewood, Sheridan Green in Westminster, Wilmore Davis in Wheat Ridge, and Thompson Elementary in Arvada. Now, we have them all listed for you, and you'll find that on our website. Jeffco says declining enrollment is really the biggest driving factor for this. And we'll have more on the impacts and decisions from the school board tonight on Denver 7 News at 10.
The number of monkeypox cases in our state right now stands at 210, and Coloradans of color are disproportionately seeing high rates of transmission and low vaccination rates. According to data from state health officials, white Coloradans make up 53% of all cases. They also represent 67% of Colorado's total population. Black Coloradans make up 13% of the cases, despite just making up 4% of our population. And Hispanic or Latino Coloradans make up 33% of cases, despite representing 22% of the state population. Accessible health care also making it more difficult for these communities to get vaccine access. And Denver 7's Micah Smith spoke to 2 organizations hoping to help.
We're always disproportionately impacted.
James Greer is talking about the inequities in healthcare for Black Coloradans.
And so that's where I think in healthcare we need to focus our energies, is how do we target those markets.
And he would know. He is the Senior Vice President of Operations for Vivint Health.
Vivint Health is an HIV medical home.
Even before the disproportionate impacts of monkeypox or MPV on people of color and the LGBTQIA+ community, his clinic has already started preparing.
And we have our on-site testing here now as we are transitioning into this world of monkeypox.
Greer says they are also using partnerships made during the pandemic.
CDPHE has brought in about 60 plus partners, and we all meet on a weekly basis. CDPHE updates us on the information that they have. We update them on what we're learning, because we're all trying to do this together. There's only so many vaccines.
It has to do with resources. It has to do with access to health.
Tony Baruti, Center for African American Health Board Chair, says MPV's impact on Black communities is not a result of genetics or being more susceptible, but a result of accessible health care.
When we talk about access, it's really looking at the communities itself and what resources are coming into those communities. We have federal funds that are set aside specifically for health equity.
But Baruti says that funding doesn't always trickle down.
One thing that we would like to say to the state local leaders is that currently there's no funding for community outreach for vaccinations for monkeypox.
Baruti says combining state funding and the trust they've already built in Black and brown communities could help nonprofits like hers reach patients that are most at risk. Reporting in Denver, Micah Smith, Denver 7.
A nightmare flight back to Denver. We look at what protections passengers have after a plane taxied for 6 hours on the tarmac before the flight was canceled.
Plus, the Broncos are preparing for their preseason finale, and it's a final chance for a couple of players to prove they should land a spot on the roster.